Okay. Thanks so much. First of all, thanks everyone for coming and for inviting me to participate remotely. This is so perfect given the subject matter. Ryan, thank you for the terrific introduction. It really lays the groundwork for what I was going to talk about. My PhD student Seth Weens and I have written a white paper for the Pacific Institute on Climate Solutions about sort of how institutions can look at reducing air travel emissions. And this came about because, well, first of all, the University of British Columbia, by provincial mandate, takes climate action very seriously. Campus has reduced its emissions by 1/3 over the past decade and is looking for a 2/3 reduction, and often casts out to the faculty for ideas. And I suggested that we look at a way to track and address air travel, saying that, this won't be simple, but let's at least look at how we can track air travel emissions and start the work towards mitigation. And then the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, which is based in Victoria, offered to fund Seth to help write a white paper about this. So I'm just going to sort of give you the highlights of what we've done, and this will be coming out very soon, and I'll be happy to share it with everybody. So the key thing is we tried to do a case study on UBC and then use that to try to draw like what a roadmap for action would be for universities, but also other public sector institutions that have a similar challenge. And so our initial goal was to do a bottom-up analysis of air travel emissions from UBC, which meant going back to travel requisitions and figuring it out from there. That proved to be incredibly time-consuming and also logistically difficult because we had to fight with a lot of departments and units to give us their travel requisitions for this purpose. So we instead used a small sample from 8 units on campus, a smaller sample, and then also collected data from an online booking tool that the campus uses. I guess one of the sort of ironies of this work, of course, is that I didn't even know we had an online air travel booking tool. But that is what the university had been using to track how much air travel the university uses. But most faculty are never going to use an online tool on the university's website. They're going to go to the kayak.com or whatever to book flights. So we've done this analysis. We also did a survey of sort of faculty attitudes and technology options on campus. And we really had like 4 kind of key findings. The first, which is not really a surprise, is that the emissions from business-related air travel is really significant in relation to the other emissions from the institution. So we estimated air travel emissions from UBC as somewhere between 63 and 73% of the total of the emissions from operating the campus, right? And this is a campus of 45,000 students, and during the average workday during the semester is 73,000 people. So the air travel is really significant. And in some cases, we compared it on a unit-to-unit level. My own Department of Geography, because we have a very efficient heating system, the business-related air travel emissions, so myself flying to a conference, et cetera, you add all that up, it's about 30 times that of the building that we work in. Just for the numbers for comparison, right? And that's a bit unique because our department's very efficient, but even if you look at departments that haven't updated their heating systems, the air travel emissions end up being somewhat equivalent to that of the operation of the building. So just for comparison. If you drill into the data more, we found that the sort of Pareto principle is at play here, where a small fraction of the people are responsible for the majority of the emissions. And so 50% of the air travel emissions are produced by 8 to 11% of the population, depending what sample we look at. And what's really relevant here, given the subject of today's panel, is that we're able to, by doing this bottom-up analysis, we're able to look into the travel requisition forms and find out why people are traveling. And so we found that conference attendance represented more than half of the trips, so 55% of the emissions, I mean. And then if you add in travel for lectures and non-UBC travel, so people UBC paid for to travel to UBC, which is probably to give a lecture, it's up to about 2/3. So that's sort of point number 2. Point 3 is that by having this sample, we're able to sort of test what some mitigation measures might do. Things like saying, let's replace all same-day return trips, people who fly to Kelowna and back in the day, with a virtual meeting. Let's try to cancel flights where you fly solely for a lecture, which you can do virtually, etc. And we found with these sort of simple measures, you could cut emissions by about 12%. The biggest part of that was actually just replacing all non-economy class tickets with economy tickets. And we can talk about that later because generally you're not allowed to purchase a non-economy class ticket and bill it through public institution, but there are a variety of ways it does still happen. And so that was the third one. And our fourth big point is it was very clear that improving access to technology like what we're using today is really critical to sort of shifting the behavior. When in our survey, when we asked people what UBC could do to support you reduce your need to fly, improving teleconferencing on campus was the most common answer. That was about 46% of people answered that. And the obstacles people listed were lack of awareness of options, like where is there a video conference room in my building or on campus, as well as the quality of the communication, right? So the quality of the technology. But what was interesting, the survey also showed that very few respondents purchase carbon offsets. Many cited cost as an issue. Many cited that they didn't know what they were, but also a lot perceived the lack of effectiveness. So a lot of people, including myself, would answer or question buying offsets because they're not sure whether it's really accomplishing the goal. And so from that, we kind of developed this sort of roadmap, and it's in the white paper, and I'll be happy to share with everybody once it's officially out. The first thing that we think is critical for any institution to do, and we're pushing for at UBC, is to have a centralized accounting system and to integrate it into the financial management system so that you can track air travel really easily without much administrative burden and track the emissions if you just had the calculator in the financial management system so that the carbon emissions from air travel is calculated as soon as air travel is billed, basically, to the university. And this will be really important if we're trying to impact the how successful mitigation is being. A second thing is that we really need, like UBC and other institutions, need a really centralized communication technology strategy that's sort of a part of the climate action planning. And so we are suggesting having an institution-wide committee that oversees efforts, and these efforts might include updating the software licenses, developing facilities with state-of-the-art hardware, and things like offering matching funds to units that want to host virtual events. These sort of funds for like teaching and learning enhancement have been really successful at UBC. For other purposes, we think you can do it here. Another thing, again, is to obviously target these easy, low-cost actions. The most clear one being close all the loopholes that are allowing people to get economy class, non-economy class travel reimbursed. That, you know, if you're welcome to do that, but you cannot be reimbursed to the university for that. A fourth one is to sort of develop a behavioral incentive systems. And one of the benefits of having a centralized technology strategy, tracking of air travel emissions, is that you can give people tailored reports and feedbacks, like by person, by unit. Every year you get a report on your emissions from air travel, comparing it to that of your neighbors or neighboring units and whatnot. And I think, as sort of Ryan was alluding, that's part of the way of sort of encouraging this sort of change in norms. So I'll thank everybody for listening and be happy to contribute as the panel goes forward. Thank you.